now recording. Damian Trujillo from NBC Bay Area Telemundo is also joining us. So, bienvenidos. ¿Cómo estás, mi amigo?
Muy bien, gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you for being here today. I think Martin Casillas. Martin, are you there?
Yes, sir.
You get to start us off. Go for it.
Oh, boy.
Hey, Martin.
Hello. I wanted to ask a question that when I was watching the interview, you said that you got struck by a ricochet, right? A ricochet projectile?
Correct.
Now, having been through all those types of ordeals, how is it that you can stay motivated to keep searching for the story and keep going down in the midst of everything that's going on, like, for example, a riot or a protest?
In that case, it's the journalistic instinct. I knew that I was home and my station brought me into work because of what was happening. And so I knew that I had a job to do, and mainly it was to be a witness for the viewer, to express to them what I was watching, what I was witnessing. But before I got hit with the ricochet, there was a rock that came about that close from my head. And that was from a protester who smashed the car of a San Jose police cruiser. And so it started right from the minute I hit boots on the ground, and that's when the rocks were flying. But at that point I've said this a lot, you put your head on a swivel, and you watch your photographer's back and he watches your back, just to make sure that they're seeing something that you're not, makes you aware of it. But it's a journalistic instinct. It's the will to, one, to get it right, but two, to be a witness to the viewer, because they can only see whatever is in their TV box or on their iPhone or Android. I can scan and see everything, and so my job is to be a witness for the viewer, basically.
Very good.
Thank
Veronica Villon.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So my question for you is, watching the interview with Bob, you mentioned how when you were coming back from the protest that, you had your kids crying and running up to you and stuff. So mine's kind of like a two-parter. So the first part is more of earlier in your career, were you ever hesitant to have children? And then the second part is more of, how do you make sure that your family doesn't feel neglected being in a field where you're required to get pulled away at random times or during important events?
That's a great question. So before I had kids, I would work the holidays. I would volunteer. I would work whatever shift they asked. If there was a fire and a child had died in that fire, to me it was sad, but I had a job to do and I moved on. Since I had kids, if I respond to the same call and there's a fire and a child has died, I take a step back, because instantly your child's image is portrayed on that victim. And you think, God, what if it was my child? How would I feel? Here I am sticking the microphone in a parent's face who's grieving. How would I feel? By a reporter who's asking me these stupid questions. How do I feel? How do I think I feel? I just lost my child. So you put yourself in that situation a lot more. But I take a step back, I take a deep breath, and I have a job to do. No matter how powerful that might be. So the way I report has not changed since I've had children. I'm fortunate that they completely understand. My wife talks to them a lot. She graduated with a journalism degree. She knows exactly what the job entails. It'd be hard if I called and said, I'm leaving. I'm on a next flight to Houston. I don't know when I'm coming back. Mm-hmm. If I had a wife and a family who did not understand that, it'd be hard. It'd be a difficult job to do. But fortunately, my kids get it. My family gets it. My kids were the same way. 3 years ago, I went to cover Hurricane Harvey in Houston. A month later, there's buildings collapsed in Mexico City because there was a giant 7.4 earthquake. So I flew to that. And it was just, it was disaster whiplash. And I remember when I landed in San Jose after that flight, I parked my truck in my driveway and my kids ran out, to hug me because, they didn't know if I was coming back. You're in an earthquake zone where the building standards are not what they are here. And I knew that going in. I knew that there was a chance that I might not be coming back. maybe that's a little extreme, but it did cross my mind, and it apparently crossed my kids' minds as well. And I try to comfort them whichever way I can. I don't do that a lot. I don't go out a lot unless it's something big like that. But they know that I won't hesitate. If they call my number, I'm going.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Richie Zajic. Richie, are you with us? All right, and we will move on to Brooks Rossi. Brooks, are you there? All right, Paulina, you're next.
Hello.
Hi.
So I have a question to you as to a reporter and Mexican American person. So I think that there is some resemblance between discrimination of Black and Latino communities. And how do you feel? Do you feel ever overwhelmed while covering such protests and like with anger or empathy? And do you think that such protests bring some change to your own community as well?
I never cover with anger, and I never cover with empathy. I might be empathetic about a subject I'm interviewing again because if they lost somebody, but I can't do it with empathy. If I do it with anger or empathy, then I think I've crossed that threshold. Whereas you have to remain neutral, and you can't be biased. But I think I come, as you mentioned, with the Mexican-American background, where there has been a history of police abuse going back to the 60s and probably before that. So I know there's that. I know there's racial profiling. I know that certain people are stopped because of the way we look. But at the same time, I can't, as long as I understand that, and that, I think it makes my reporting a little better, a little clearer. I'm able to approach the subject a little better maybe than someone who has not had those life experiences, but I can't do it with anger. As long as I'm thorough and unbiased and neutral, I think that's my job. And but I am human, and I don't know. I'm sure that sometimes I have crossed that threshold. I can't think of an instance, but I'm sure viewers would have some examples. I'm human. I try to do the best I can. But just to answer to surmise, yeah, you go into a story like that with your background, knowing that you might be able to cover it better. But I can't bring the anger to the table.
And by the way, Damian, that was an international question. Tell them, Paulina, where you're from.
Oh, I'm from capital of Ukraine, from Kiev. Yeah, so this whole situation is wild for me because we don't have such issues. And as you might know, we had this huge presidential protest back in 2014 when I personally still don't know what happened, but I think it was SWAT team, they started firing at people, and in one night 100 people were killed. They were protesting against the government, and as a result, our former president he escaped with tons of gold and icons and paintings and all that stuff to Russia, and he kept claiming as legitimate president of Ukraine. So I'm curious. I'm trying to understand how things work in United States, and I'm trying to understand it from my perspective, from your perspective, from white people perspective, and police. So yeah, that's really curious topic for me.
And that's a great point. I mean, there is a police perspective, and I think that's something that we haven't delved into a lot to see where they're coming from.
Yeah, that's important to know.
Yeah, I mean, I know so many of them that they really don't know if they're coming home that night because they know that once they put their badge on and their gun on, that there's a chance they might not be coming home. And I know that they don't go out there looking to hurt somebody, for the most part, looking to kill somebody. That's not, in knowing the dozens and dozens of police officers I know that's not what they go out to do. Now, in seeing some of their online posts and to see how extreme their thinking is, it's a little disturbing to see some of that, but I guess they're entitled to their opinion as well. I wish they were like me, where as a journalist, I can't express my opinion on my private Facebook page. I have to watch. Sometimes I do, but I have to watch. It can't be political. It can't be pointed at a particular group. It's just, you ruin your credibility, and my job relies a lot on credibility.
Absolutely. By the way, don't look at my Facebook page today, because I kind of go after people, and I don't have the same restraints you do. Michael, why don't you go ahead with your question?
So you go through a lot of extreme things in life just because of everything that you have to go through every day. Do you ever feel that your mental health can get affected from it? And if so, are you able to cope with that successfully, or are you just able to work through it immediately? Because there's some dangerous things that you're going through potentially every day.
You guys have some awesome questions. I'll tell you what, when I was flying back from Mexico City, I cried on the plane, because you're in front of this 12-story building that is now about this big. And you know that there's people still alive in there and people that have been crushed to death. And how can that not affect anybody? When you're in the middle of it, you don't have time to think about that. You don't have time to decompress mentally. You have a job to do. You're on deadline. You're on at 6 a.m. and then you're on at midnight again and back on at 6 a.m. In 2 languages for 2 different TV stations where the cultures are different. You don't have time to think about it. But there have been a lot of times where I just sit back on my couch and I will cry, because some of the things you see and you hear, you put yourself in their shoes and they're just heart-wrenching. If you don't cry, it is you're not human. But I thank you for the question. My boss has asked me the same question. My wife has asked me the same questions. Yeah, there are times when you do need to decompress. I haven't done it professionally, just here with family.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for the question.
Of course.
And there's no sin in seeking professional advice. I remember as a reporter, I had to speak to a counselor after being at 3 Mile Island. Those issues just kind of get into your head. Jayla Pons.
Hi.
Hi.
You spoke about telling all sides of the story, and I've noticed that there's like a clear bias in some news reporting, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I wanted to know how people can improve their media literacy, especially during these times.
That's another, you guys have great questions. I think that the message from Black Lives Matter is awesome. I think it's been awesome. Once we start, I think, crossing the line, I think those who cross the line hijack that message from the positiveness that is meant. As I mentioned in the video, I wouldn't have been called in to cover that protest if it wasn't turning chaotic. I got called in because they had blocked Highway 101 and were smashing windows and were threatening drivers. At that point is when I got called in, and that's when the message gets hijacked. And I don't know what the BLM movement can do to avoid those kinds of images, those kinds of circumstances. Obviously, you try to get your point across in the right way, the most effective way, and obviously it's not working because things are still happening. And I don't know if civil unrest is the way, but when you talk about civil unrest, then all we're seeing are the images that put the BLM movement in a bad light. And unfortunately, we have to report those bad images that we're seeing. But I don't know if you could control that message, because once you do start protesting and taking the streets over, you are inviting other elements to that movement, inviting with quotes. They'll join, and then they will hijack whatever positive message you have, message of change, and then the message becomes, boy, they're burning our buildings, they're burning our city, they've taken over the streets. And that's the message, and it's not, let's sit at the table and how could we fix this structurally? Because there's a structural problem, but it just, the message kind of veers in a different direction when we see all of that.
Jacqueline Vila.
Yes. Hi, Damian. I don't know if you remember me, but I was a part of the NBC Bay Area class that you talked at last week.
Ah, yes.
And I know you mentioned you're going to be here, so it's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
My question is in regards to like all of the stories that you have covered. Obviously, you have covered really huge, like the Mexico earthquake. Like I know you talked about that in the class, and you said like when you saw someone like put their fist up, like everyone went silent. So is there like a story that has stuck with you and like impacted you the most, where you look back at it and it just like it still like takes your breath in a way?
You know, at the same time during that earthquake, I saw the best of humanity, because you had people driving up with their mopeds, and on their own, the citizens themselves, they got together and they were shipping supplies to whichever colonia, whichever community needed it the most. And these are not appointed by the city, not appointed by the government. These are people who said, we're going to start a civilian force, and our government is slow in responding. We're going to do it ourselves. And it was great to see. You did see the best in humanity. So that sticks with you. You saw the good and the bad there. There's another great story that sticks with me. And she was a lady who worked at City Hall. And she was a janitor. This is San Jose City Hall. But I didn't really see her as a janitor, because every time I walked into City Hall, she's cleaning whatever, and she would clean the dais for the council, and she had a smile on her face. Ah, mijo, welcome. So I called her the ambassador to San Jose City Hall, and so they allowed me to do a story on her, just how she was seen as an ambassador, and the mayor talked highly about her and all the administrative staff. And so she had cancer, and she passed away, and when they opened her locker, she had my picture in her locker. And so and I guess that locker has been, I don't want to say sealed, but it's not assigned anymore, and my picture's still in there. And it's stories like that that say, boy, this is worth it.
Wow, that's quite a tribute, man. Congratulations on that.
Rosalinda Rivas was her name.
Muy bien. Olivia Gerber.
Hello. My question is, what advice would you give to young journalists who have been covering the protests and who are looking to cover protests that may be occurring in the future?
I guess first of all is go for it and cover it, and cover both sides of it. Be a witness to your viewers. But now, this day and age, protect yourself. Keep your head on a swivel. I think you saw in the video, I had to purchase my own vest and helmet for protection from both sides, because you were being assailed from both sides. So keep your head on a swivel, protect yourself, and do the best job you can in reporting what you see, not what you think you see. There was a guy who, in the broadcast, I saw he was hit with a rubber bullet. And I must have hit him in the arm, or because it went like this and he started walking back. But I had seen that guy. He had thrown 3 rocks or bottles or whatever at the police line. And so that's what they were doing, targeting people who were throwing projectiles at the cops. And so they finally got him and he was hit. So it's kind of hard to feel sorry for that guy who was hit, because I witnessed what he was doing, on the other side. So I reported what I saw. I said, this guy It's the third time I've seen him do it, and so now we got hit. The other thing I mentioned on the live broadcast is because things had gotten out of hand by this point, and what I said is that Cesar Chavez lived a couple of miles from where all of this was happening. He lived off of Alum Rock Avenue and White Road. And I said, you know, if Cesar Chavez were around to see this, he would shake his head and disagree because he believed in nonviolence, nonviolent protest. And again, I had been there for 2 hours already. And the reason I went, because violence had already started. I was on Highway 101 and again, the rocks were flying, they were hitting patrol cars and police did nothing. They let them carry on, hoping that they would disperse. And it wasn't until they got to City Hall, and I don't know at what point the cops initiated their rubber bullets and tear gas, but I guess they felt that they'd had enough. But that was after 2 hours of getting pelted. So I guess I strayed a little bit, but and be that witness and keep your head on a swivel.
Jesus Eduardo. Jesus?
Is that me, Jesus Telitude? That's my middle name.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Eduardo.
Thank you. I stand corrected. Go for it.
Okay. Hi, Damian.
Hi.
I just want to say I've been covering some protests for the Spartan Daily too, so I really commend your bravery for that because I know it gets really dangerous out there. I know when I was covering it, there was like people pushing me when I was taking photos. So yeah, I just want to commend you for that.
Thank you.
My question is towards, as like a young reporter, what are some mistakes that you've done, you know, in your career early on where you're like, you know, you learned from it, and you've improved? Like, is there like a story that sticks out with you that, you know, you think that you could have done better? And if so, like, how did you go from there?
My very first story. It was at Telemundo. I was doing Spanish news. That's how I got in. And it was my very first story. And it was a union beef with either a company or an industry. So I went out and I did my report and it aired. I came back and it aired. And my GM, not my news director, my GM called me in and says, Damian, next time I want to get both sides to that story. Because I just had the union side. Here's what the union says. Here's what the union says. And guess what? It never happened again. It took one talking to by my general manager to say, you have to get both sides. And I should have known that. I mean, I took Bob's classes. He told us all of that. But when you're in it, you think I have a journalism degree. I know what I'm doing. I'm ready to go. But when it came down to it, I didn't get both sides. And that's on me. And it never happened again. And sometimes if I don't get both sides, I'll give sometimes, if it's very serious, we'll wait a couple of days before we do the story. We want to give them the benefit because it's very serious. But if it's not as serious, if they don't call me by 4 o'clock, then I'm going with what I have without their response, or I'm knocking on their doors and saying, why haven't you called back? They don't like that, and they do respond. I did it. There was one time when the DA sends out a press release, and it was about change in policy, and they said, we will have no further comment at this point. I said, wait a minute, what do you mean we'll have no further comment? So I waited outside the elevator of the DA's office, and I said, he's got to go to lunch. So I waited, and then the PIO, the spokesman for the DA, came out, and he saw me. He said, what are you doing? I'm waiting for Jeff. We're not going to have any comment. I says, he's got to talk. And he says, hang tight. So he went up and he says, he'll be here in an hour, he'll talk to you. I don't like doing that. I'm not an ambush reporter. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Ambush reporter is when you do surprise someone and you're doing it more for show than for the journalistic integrity of your story. I like giving people time to respond, give them a fair shake. But if they push it, I'm going to push it as well. But yeah, just, I guess most importantly, just get both sides. If you hit the ball down the middle each and every single time, you're going to do great. Just have that fire and have that, what the fire inside of me is, I want to beat Kit Doe at Channel 5. I want to beat Jesse Gary at Channel 2. I want them to see my tweets and my reports and say, "Oh heck, where did he get that?" That's what drives me every day. And if I can get them angry every day, then my job gets better.
I'm sure
Thank you.
Kit would be very happy to hear you name another one of our graduates at a competing station, no less. Karen Solis. Karen, are you with us? It doesn't seem like it. So let's go to Madeline Medina.
Hello, nice to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
The question I had was about actually I attended the protest that you were talking about on the one-on-one with everything that happened. I think that was one of the first protests that happened here in downtown San Jose. And just like as a person that was part of it, I saw a little bit of like discrepancies in the way it was reported. Just because I know, there was some really big things that happened, like the window being smashed and things. But I would say that about 99% of the protests did end up being peaceful. But I saw the media, of course, highlighting, the chaotic aspects of it. So I was wondering, just I guess, given the history of, protests being labeled violent and, maybe being labeled as riots as well, how do you ensure that the stories are covered in a way that these aspects aren't overlooking everything else?
Good question, Maddie. You got to understand, I got called in because it stopped being peaceful. I got called in because they were on 101 breaking windows and threatening drivers. I was fine at home, but I called in because it had crossed the threshold. And it took me 5 minutes for rocks to start flying past my head. At that point, I knew that it wasn't peaceful. So at that point, you watch what the police tactics are. And I was surprised that police at that point, after they got off 101, they were restrained. They witnessed these kids throwing rocks at their cars and they did nothing. And I was shocked. I mean, I thought, okay, you're going in or whatever. And they left them alone. They punctured their tires and they left them alone. Again, it wasn't until they got to City Hall that they started responding. And that's when they went from bad to worse. But again, I go back and I look at my reporting that day, and I think that for the most part, I was just describing what I was seeing. And again, the first image I see is them coming off of 101. And I know the destruction that was caused on 101. And here's how bad it was. The next day, we were going to pick up takeout food. My family, let's get out of the house. It's COVID. We haven't gone out. Let's just go pick up food and come back. And my son grabs me and says, "Daddy, are we going to go on Highway 101? Yes, we have to go on 101. I don't want to go, Daddy. I know what if they're on 101? So that's the image that they saw. And they know that that's the reason Daddy had to go into work. But when you're live, and sometimes you say things that you want to take back or you want to rephrase. I don't think I ever had that moment. I think I was there describing what I saw. I think maybe the moment was when I mentioned the Cesar Chavez and what he would have done. Maybe that's inserting my personal view of things, but I think it was more analytical than anything. And if I did cross that threshold in my reporting, then I'll be the first one to take the fall for it. But in looking back, I don't think I did. I think I was a witness to it. Now, subsequent reporting, now you've had a chance to analyze. Now you've had a chance to see what was done and see what could have said better. I think, I think there was some things that were said by several stations that maybe could not have been said. But again, it's live TV, it's happening live. You're just trying to describe what you're seeing.
Guadalupe, evening deal. Guadalupe?
Yes. Okay, so my question is, at what point in your relationship with the chiefs of police did you have to have a conversation about your job roles, and how did you go above that?
About my job role with the chief?
Yes, about your job duties as a journalist.
Yeah, I've had those with every chief. And I've told every chief, and I think I mentioned this in the video, I've told all of them, and I've been covering chiefs since Chief Covarrubias back in the early 90s. I said, Chief, your last name might be Covarrubias, and I'm going to do the positive stories, but I'm also going to do the negative stories. And that's my job as a journalist, and you know, we need to have that understanding. And I did the positive, and I did the negative. I've done the positive with this chief, and I think I've done a lot of positive, but I've also done the negative. And like I mentioned in the video, there are times where he'll text me, and he'll say, "What the F was that?" Talking about my reporting, and my response has always been, I have a duty to my press pass, and that's first and foremost. And again, I've lost a couple of friends and contacts because they felt that I maybe be a little easy on them, but I can't. Well, you can't. Once you carry that press pass with you, that's like, it should be like an officer's badge, duty, honor, country. That's how I see it, and I don't do anything that would tarnish that press pass. And being biased or being or siding with a certain side, and that's a blemish to the press pass. I don't do that.
You know, it should be noted, when you were a student in my class back in the 90s, you had already developed a relationship with the police chief, Covarrubias. I remember something you reported in the radio class we had at the time. So it's all right for students to be thinking that way as well, to develop those relationships. And by the way, the current police chief, as you well know, is on leave, but I interviewed him for this process, and he speaks very highly of you. He puts you at the top of the list of one of the best journalists here in the Bay Area.
And he did send me a message after the my coverage that day, because I think, you know, he said, you gave us our shots, but he also gave the other side shots, and you know, they can live with that. As long as you're fair, I think they should live with it. I mean, you're fair.
Right, it's the nature of the jobs that we all have. Yasmin Palomino. Yasmin, are you with us? All right, then let's see. Who haven't I called on that didn't get to speak last time? I'm going to put you on view. Raise your hand so I can see if you have not been called on. All right, Ken Trang, and then I'll come back to the hands after that. Ken, go for it.
Hi, Damian. So my question is, are there specific protocols that you have to follow if an event like you're covering, like the protest, goes out of hand, or do you like try to prioritize the coverage as much as you can?
Good question. We should have had a debrief at my station, I think, and we didn't, because we were just sent out, and because it was happening all of a sudden. Because of my experience, because I should know what I'm supposed to do, and I should know what I'm not supposed to do. There were times in my ear, I'm wearing my earpiece here, there were times in my ear where my news director was saying, "Damian, get out of there. Damian, I don't want you there. Damian, get out of there." So I would back away, but the action was there, man. If you want to get the action, you got to be right in the middle of it. So we kind of ease our ways back in. But she saw what was going on, and she was keeping an eye on the crews and our safety. I made the mistake that I should have been behind the police officers. That would have kept me behind the line of fire. But I got to the point where I tried doing it, and you got the baton kind of nudge on your ribs, kind of, where are you going? You know, they didn't know I was a reporter. I'm dressed like I am now because, again, I went from home. I don't think that there is a protocol. I think you use your life experience as a journalist to get the news on. I think at my age, I did purchase, it's kind of like a bulletproof vest, but without the steel in it. It's just the vest, and I bought that just to protect me from any possible projectiles, however they can help. But you know, if you need, we at my age, you come to the sense where if you need to put something like that on, maybe you shouldn't be there in the first place. And you know, and I think, again, I think my news director saw that a couple of times and told me to get out. But boy, I want to get the story. You know, I want to be that witness. And so we hung around.
It's a good news director who's paying attention to your safety.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Yes,
good.
yes, he was.
Let's go back to gallery view and see by hands anybody who has not been called on in either of the two interviews we've done. All right, Riel, please go for it.
Hi. So my question is in regards to the 101 protest. You said you were called out because the protests were no longer peaceful. Why do you think that peaceful protests are overlooked to favor the violent protests? Could you say that the media plays a role as an instigator in creating a more hostile environment?
Well, I mean, I think that might, you know, there might be some truth in that. Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, the peaceful protest started at City Hall. And then a small branch broke off, and by 4 o'clock, they had taken over 101, the branch that broke off. They left the peaceful protesters at City Hall, and you know, that's great. And we were covering that as well. We weren't ready, and I don't think police were ready for what happened at 4 o'clock. But again, I'm not going to turn a blind eye because, oh, this is going to look bad on the movement. I'm sorry, I'm a witness. I see what I'm seeing. If I see them scaring the crap out of drivers, how can I not report that? How can I not say that? That's when, if I don't say that, then we're censoring the viewers. But yeah, I mean, repeating those images over and over, you know, you do get maybe it sends a message. Oh, this is going on every street corner. This is happening in every street. This is happening in every city. And yeah, maybe we do play a role in that. But at that point, I saw kids there, and I'm thinking, and older folks, and I said, "What are you doing here?" You know, I'm fearing for my safety. Why are there kids here? And it was at that point at 101 that I saw kids there. And you know, bless the kids, they were there to participate in a peaceful protest. And if you're starting at an early age, you know, more power to you. Unfortunately, those kids were witness to something that they shouldn't have been witness to. And I'm not going to turn a blind eye to that. No matter if it makes somebody look good or bad. I just got to report on what I saw.
Thank you.
Excellent point. Who hasn't had a chance to ask a question either in a previous class or with this guest? Last chance, raise your hand. Madison, I have you listed as asking a question last time.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant I haven't asked.
No, for either one of the two guest lectures, has everybody had a chance to ask a question? Speak now or forever hold your voice. All right,
Shelby
very
has
good.
her hand up.
Shelby, all right, Shelby, go for it.
I don't remember asking a question.
Go ahead, Shelby.
Okay, my question was, has reporting or the intensity of the stories that you're covering, has it changed from when you first started your career or compared to now?
I think it has, simply because getting stories is a lot easier than it was back then. A lot of you out there are kind of our citizen journalists because you're pulling out your phones and you're broadcasting what you're seeing as well. And so you're there a lot of times before we even get our professional cameras in there. So you're kind of our citizen journalists. Everything, a lot of our coverage is online now. A lot of our coverage is on social media now. Nobody is really watching TV news anymore unless it's something like this and it's something that is happening in a live sense. Then yeah, they'll tune in. But for the most part, they're watching their cell phone. So a lot of things have changed. You can write and edit the story on your cell phones, and that's scary to me. It's easier for you guys because you guys were born with electronics in your hands. For me, I have to migrate into that, and I'm not good. I'm very slow. My editing is very poor online, but it's something that it's still a work in progress. So it's changed significantly.
Thank you.
All right, let's have a little fun, Damian. And Por favor, ¿cómo se dice, ask me a question in Spanish?
Hazme una pregunta en español. Let me just,
Yo tengo una pregunta.
ándale.
Real quick. Hey, so we have a lot of you said student journalists, but we have a lot of journalists here in the meeting. What advice do you have for them? Say if they have to move. Say if what advice do you say that they should be thinking of now to get them prepared for their future life?
And it's true of when I started. Is you really have to want it. You really have to want to do this because you're working Christmas. You're working Christmas Eve. You're working the night shift. You're working the overnight shift. You're making $14 an hour in Timbuktu, Texas. And you're going to be there. And you're going to be there for 2 years before you go to Topeka and be there for 2 years and make close to nothing. You really have to want it because at the start of your career, it's going to be challenging to sell it to your parents and sell it to yourself. This is what I got into it for me to be making minimum wage doing journalism. And unfortunately, that's what some of these stations pay. So you really have to want it. And once you really want it, then it's hard to get rid of it. It sticks there. You have to be inquisitive. You have to want to know everything first and be the first one to say that to somebody else. That's what drives me. Once you get to a market like this, then the pay is significantly better and the stories are better. The exposure is greater, and you're doing stories that you never imagined. You're crossing police lines, whereas nobody else can. You're crossing fire lines. I was covering the fire, the SJSU fire here in the East Hills of San Jose, and I got to a checkpoint. The road's closed. And the CHP officer says, "You can't go, only firefighters." And I said, "With all the respect, ma'am, there's California Penal Code 409.5 subsection D." She said, "I understand that, but I was told nobody beyond this point." She says, "Let me see if I can go to get a hold of CAL FIRE." So 10 minutes later, CAL FIRE drives up. He was a CAL FIRE captain, and she's chatting with him. I can hear her about something else in his truck. She says, "By the way, there's a reporter here who wants to get through." And he tells her, the media can go anywhere they want. And so it's such an amazing power that you have. You just have to learn how to deal with that power and use it to the viewer's ability, not to your best ability. It's because you're there, you're working for the viewer, you're working for the public. And so your access, you're their witness again. You're their eyes and ears. And so it's a lot of power that you have. But that's why I'm saying you have to really want it. And once you really want it and you have it, you're kicking doors down. You're going for it.
It's just a very rewarding career. There's no doubt about it. I did want to see if anybody wanted to ask a question in Spanish. Now is your moment. Go for it. No Spanish speakers in the group other than Juan and me partially, and of course our guest. Fascinating. That's the first time that's ever happened in our diversity class.
Let me just say, I had a question.
Yeah.
¿Cómo te quería preguntar, cuando tú estás explicando tu profesión a tu familia, ¿cómo le explicas a ellos? Porque unas veces le digo a mi mamá que yo quiero cubrir un protesto o algo, pero luego ella me dice que estoy en peligro o quiero, quiere que yo esté salvo, pues. ¿Cómo le explicas a tu familia que quieres estar afuera cubriendo protestos y todo eso?
A mi mamá no le digo. A mi familia sí, a mi mamá. Yo me acuerdo, yo era pequeño y era la guerra en El Salvador. Y yo veía la cobertura y yo le decía a mi mamá, yo quiero ser uno de esos. Yo quiero ser uno de esos. I want to be one of those reporters covering that war. Estás loco, es muy peligroso. No hagas eso. But así, esa fue su reacción de ella. Cuando fui a la Ciudad de México, no le dije. Las comadres le dijeron que su hijo anda por allá, ya lo vi en la televisión. Y me llama mi mamá, mira, no me has dicho, es que no te quiero preocupar. Entonces, ¿cómo voy a rezar por ti si no sé en dónde andas? No le digo, pero ella siempre se entera. She finds a way.
I love it. Thank you very much. Great question. Thank you. I'm always wondering why people are shy about showcasing their language, especially if they're multilingual. You have a program on Telemundo, plus you report in Spanish and news. Talk a little bit about that, Damian.
Well, I started reporting in Spanish. My first job was at Telemundo. I did the assignments desk for 6 months, and then because they didn't have my Spanish wasn't good enough to be a reporter. But 6 months later, they brought in candidates for a reporter position, and 5 candidates, and the news record didn't like the candidates, and he says, "Do you still want to be a reporter?" And I said, "Heck yeah." So he made me a reporter 6 months later. So I started doing Spanish news, and I can say that because I know 2 languages, I've gotten stories that I would not have normally gotten if I didn't speak the language. I would not have gone to Mexico City if I didn't speak the language. It's double the work, and Spanish is not easy for me. It was my first language growing up, but it's now my second language, and I speak street Spanish. I say garage instead of cochera. I use a lot of Spanglish terms. My news director I've been doing a public affairs show for 24 years at NBC, Comunidad del Valle, and it's in English. And since NBC bought Telemundo 10 years ago, 4 years ago, my general manager came up to my desk and he says, "How hard is it to do your show in Spanish?" And I thought, I said, "Well, technically, it's not hard at all. I mean, it's just more time. But I don't speak the language the way the anchors do at that same station, Telemundo." He said, "Well, don't worry about that. We'll address that later." So I think the first 3 weeks of the show, I went on the air and I said, "Perdón, me disculpan, mi español no es perfecto, pero espero que me lo acepten." I'm sorry, my Spanish isn't perfect, but I hope you still accept me in what we have to say to you. Well, in 2 months, the Telemundo show became the highest rated show on that channel on Saturdays. And it goes to show just how much there's hunger for this type of information in that Hispanic community. But yeah, I mean, it's gotten me stories that I wouldn't normally get, and I can now relay some very important messages in 2 languages, which is a great asset.
And it's interesting too, because I know there are people in the community who listen to you in Spanish and English, and they're bilingual, and they'll try to correct you. By the way, I live with one right here. So he's always telling me, "I like the way Damian talks," or "I don't like the way so-and-so talks," because that does make a difference. For students, there's sometimes a trepidation. Notice the quietness, the non-desire to come forward with that. Damian, you weren't like that when you were in school. You used to tell me, "Can I do this in Spanish? Can I do my reel in English and Spanish?" Why did you know back then you should be doing it now?
I didn't. I didn't want to get into Spanish news. I wanted to stick with English because that's the way you taught me. I've been, learning English since kindergarten, but so I didn't. I just knew that I had the ability to do it, and why not try it? And it's paid dividends. I was breakfast this morning. One of the waiters recognized the fact that I worked at Telemundo, not NBC, and so the viewership is there, and it's been a blessing being able to do it in 2 languages.
And be thinking about any other questions you may have, folks, where I ask one more right now. The news media, the national news media, is now making a huge deal about the number of cases of COVID-19 on college campuses nationwide. And the impression I'm getting from watching those stories is that a lot of these young people are either not paying attention to what's going on or don't care. And yet I don't know if that's the case. And I would like to ask the class to educate the reporter now. When you see news reports basically saying college students around the country are being irresponsible when it comes to COVID-19, tell the reporter what they're missing. What should they be looking at? Go ahead, Madison.
Well, the number thing that first came to my mind was that college students make up a large bulk of the essential workers currently, and we're more exposed to it, and we're also, just beginning our adult lives. We kind of are still figuring our own stuff out and how to take care of ourselves on our own, and then at the same time we're being exposed more.
Okay, very good.
I'll accept that. Yeah. I know that one of my colleagues 2 nights ago shot a video of some students at Cal going to a fraternity party, and none of the 5 was wearing a mask. And I mean, it's just baffling. That side of it is baffling. But yeah, you are the essential workers. You're the ones who are waiting on tables and taking orders and doing deliveries and whatnot. So that's a big part. That's why the east side of San Jose has a huge disparity when it comes to COVID cases, because they are the essential workers. They're doing the same thing. They're the ones in your kitchens. They're the ones who are working in construction jobs. And so, I mean, I think we just got to protect ourselves. And I don't know what those students were thinking at Cal, going to a frat party with no masks. It's mind-boggling, and it's just going to keep us in this situation even longer.
Periodically, I dip into Fox News just to see what they're saying, and I happen to come across a soundbite at a Trump rally where somebody wearing the Trump cap looked at the camera and says, "Hey, if college students can do it, why can't we do it?" So you're actually sending a message to people that you don't necessarily want to send. Lester, you had a question.
Oh, I could ask any question right now, or
Any question you want.
Okay. I had one written down. 1 second.
Very quickly.
All right. So being a person of color and being someone of Hispanic descent, do you feel like your journey to becoming a reporter, especially for NBC Bay Area, did you feel like it was much harder than others? Like, did you feel like you had to work harder to get to where you're at right now?
I think so. I mean, I think that when I call the Attorney General's office in Sacramento, I think that once I say, my name is Damian Trujillo and I work for NBC, I think they take I think when I say, my name is Damian Trujillo, they're expecting for me to say, I work for Univision, I work for Telemundo. I think that we do have to work a lot harder to prove ourselves. I know that myself, I had to learn how to enunciate words better because I grew up with an accent, and I didn't realize that until I got to college that I had an accent. So we do have to work harder, I think. But once you're able to prove that my first name or last name don't matter, it's the report that I'm about to show you, then you do change people's minds, and I think I've been able to do that. But yeah, it's a good question. It wasn't easy.
Thank you.
Damian, I have a question about another diversity issue. This is diversity in the media. You and I both share a religion. We're both Roman Catholic. I know we've gone to the same church at times. You know that I'm gay. You know that I have a husband who's gay, who's also Latino from Nicaragua and El Salvador. Those issues in the culture, not the media, but in the culture, being Catholic, being gay, how do you see that issue?
Well, I think it's still difficult for a lot of people. And I'll give you an example. My dad, I lost my dad 12 years ago, but we were watching the news. He came up to see me here, and we were watching the news. And it's when Tom Amiano was running for mayor of San Francisco. And Tom was openly gay on the board of supervisors. And we were watching the news, and my dad says, "Yes, ¿quién es? Who is that?" And I said, "Oh, it's Tom Amiano. He wants to be the mayor." My dad said, "Oh, no. Eso no está bien. That's not right." And I'm like, "Dad, you can't say that. I can't believe you're saying that." But this is an old traditional Catholic who had those deep-rooted beliefs, and I think those beliefs are still out there. I think I think this next generation and the one after that is, boy, we are who we are, right? Who's to say what we can and can't be? But that older generation, strong Catholic beliefs, strong Christian beliefs, it floored me when I heard my dad say that, my own dad.
I can imagine. And I grew up Black in Chicago on the South Side in a poor community. Being Catholic was strange to Black people in the beginning, and being gay, oh no, can't have that.
Right.
We had story after story of parents beating their children if they came out as being LGBTQ. So that was a big challenge, and there was a lot of silence in the industry. There was a lot of silence in society. We just couldn't reveal those aspects. Now, Damian, let me ask you about this. When I first got here in 1990, I think I said this to your class, I had the impression that Californians didn't like talking about religion. And yet so many people identify with being Muslim or Christian or whatever, Jewish or whatever religion. Would you say that has changed now? And if so, why are Californians squeamish about religion? The rest of the country is not.
No, I think it has changed slightly. And I mean, I'll use myself as an example. When I was at San Jose State, I saw that there was religious studies. And my idiotic impression was, well, why do I want to learn about the Bible? My mom taught me all about it when I was growing up. I mean, I regret it. I mean, I wish I'd have known more about Islam, about Buddhism, about Judaism. And I kick myself because I don't know as much as I could have if I'd taken advantage of it. I don't know. I don't know if that's cultural or what it is, but that one's on me.
And you've always been very gracious when I brought my sister around. You know, my sister was born with Down syndrome. The media seems to be very squeamish about talking about issues of that diversity, of the disabled. Do you sense that too? And can you give us an explanation of why we don't see that more equally covered?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know why. I know that we've had a lot of internal meetings about how we address every community around us, but I don't think we've done enough when it comes to the disabled community. That's, I think slowly but surely, I know that we've done a lot, we've paid a lot more attention about the spectrum because some of our coworkers have children in the spectrum. And so I think that maybe that's why our own station has done maybe a bit more on that end. But it's a great question. You're right. I don't know that we're doing as much as we should.
Manny, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so my father is disabled, and I know quite a few people who are disabled. My father is an amputee. He has rheumatoid arthritis. He can't use his hands, and he's blind. And to me, it seems like the media bias against reporting on disability issues is that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So people who have the ability to raise concern about issues that are affecting them, they are the ones who get reported on, while most disabled people in this country, and especially in the Bay Area, are just working on day-to-day survival. So they're not really able to bring up certain issues. And that's one of the reasons why having certain advocacy groups that connect disabled people to one another is so important, because without having a deaf community or a blind community, nothing really gets done.
No, it's a very great point. And I wish I had an answer for you. And I think it's happening right now. We haven't done stories, and I've gotten a lot of information. We haven't done stories on the children who are learning, doing virtual distance learning, and they're on the spectrum. And they need the professional help during the day. Mom can't do it at home. It's hard for that child to focus on a laptop and take a class or whatever they need to do. We're neglecting our disabled community. We're neglecting those who are on the spectrum as far as how they're dealing, coping with distance learning. We're not doing enough on that end. Thanks for pointing that out.
Bob, you're muted.
I'm back now. Anybody else have a question for Damian?
Just give you all a quick update, Bob. Yesterday, the police department came out with its own internal report on their response. And they were very critical about their own response. I think they said they need more training in this type of response from top to bottom. And they need more accountability is what they admitted to. That's going before the city council right now.
San Jose
City Council. They're going to discuss this report right now. I haven't read the report. Some other journalists think it doesn't go far enough in police accepting blame. But from what I have read is that they're accepting that they need more training when it comes to responses like this. I just wanted to update.
Well, and thank you for that update. I really hope they do that. But Damian, I'm going to say something to you. And if you want to tell that to Eddie Garcia or anybody else, just tell them I told you it. I think training is wonderful, but let's stop hiding behind training. Let's have a more level playing field when it comes to maturity. When I talked to Eddie Garcia, like I talked to you, one of the things he admitted on video to me was he has a problem with a lack of maturity on the San Jose police force. Now, granted, we're not talking about crazy immaturity, but some of the things like taunting protesters and showing your gun and doing like that incident we saw on the news in, I believe it was in August, that should never happen. Not by me, not by his profession, not any profession. So feel free to ask the question, training is great. How do you make them more mature? Because in our profession, you don't get a job if you're not mature. If you don't keep up with current events, we don't need you. Why can't he say that to them?
Yeah, and you know, it's a rigorous background process that there is to become a police officer in San Jose. So you would think that they would flag those and kind of pick those out of the pile. And but I guess some do slip through the cracks.
Very good. Michelle Perez has a question.
Hi, Damian. I first want to acknowledge and shine light on everything you've done for farm workers on Cesar Chavez Day and with the scholarship you give to the son or daughter of a farm worker. That group is marginalized and oftentimes looked over. So all of your efforts to help them in any way is very admirable. So I just wanted to quickly shine light on that and thank you for that.
Thank you.
And my question is, besides the language barrier, what are some of the main differences you've noticed between reporting for an American news station and a Latino-based one like Telemundo?
Well, when I was working at Telemundo, I remember going to City Hall a lot, and I don't want to say nobody would pay attention to me, but nobody would pay attention to me. The city council members, the mayor, because you have the microphone flag and it says Telemundo. Oh, well, those are not my viewers, I guess. But once I came in with a microphone flag that said NBC, or it was ABC back then, they flocked to you. They want to get on that channel. So that was the biggest difference I saw from working from both stations, is the exposure, and the mainstream community paid a lot more attention to you. The pay is significantly more in English language TV, even though Spanish language has more viewers. The pay is just more in English language. So I think the overall civic impact is greater on the mainstream media, on NBC, but boy, Univision and Telemundo are kicking our butts when it comes to viewership. They're getting all the viewers and we're not.
Wow, very important to note. Damian, I want to thank you by asking you to look at something that I'm going to offer to the class now as a homework assignment. But first I need a show of hands. Raise your hand if you have access to Netflix. Raise your hand if you have access to Netflix. Keep your hand up, I want to see everybody. It looks like almost all of you have access to it. Good, here's your new homework assignment. I want you to take a look at the new documentary, The Social Dilemma. The Social Dilemma.
I've heard
Damian,
sorry. I just heard it's great.
It is. Damian, I'm going to encourage you to see it because you can come back and talk to this group if you like later, if they're willing. We had a conversation as a class a few weeks ago about how social media is beating up on people and taking advantage of people and all of the cancel culture nonsense that's going on. The Social Dilemma documentary sheds a great deal of light about how that's happening and how we allow it to happen because we're addicted to our phones because the technology made us that way. So I don't know if you've seen it, but I highly recommend it to you and Monica. Tell her that's her birthday present from Bob.
I wrote it down, thank you.
Very good. And everybody else, I want you to see it by next week. The Social Dilemma is on Netflix. Please thank our guests for being here today. A show of hands would be good. Thank you very much. Don't you just love Zoom?
It's awesome.
I like it. I really enjoy it. I get to see our faces. I can tell when they're not paying attention. I can tell when they think Bob's full of, and you know, those kind of things happen, but that's okay. I'm all right with it. Any final thought before we say goodbye, folks? Any final thought? Anybody?
Oh, me. I wanted to say something real quick.
Quickly.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say thank you for being here. I've actually have seen you. I went to Adelante, so I've seen you since like 8th grade, and my sister has class with your daughter. So I kind of have seen like since younger, and then now being here and talking to you and all these questions, I just want to say thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. Adelante is a dual language immersion school that my kids go through or went through. Yeah. Awesome.
Very nice. Go ahead, Christian, real quick.
I just wanted to say, I actually saw you at the May 29th protest. I was also covering those too as well. I saw you, like, we were both kind of bobbing and weaving from rubber bullets. I also got hit as well too. So I want to also commend you for all your work. And, like, you know, I've been following you on Twitter, like, you know, for quite a long time. So, you know, you're fucking killing it, man. So
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. You know, at the end of the day, you want to come home safe to your family, but you want to make sure that your viewers, that you did a good service to your viewers. And the days that I don't, and there have been days that I don't, it sticks with you, and you don't sleep that night, and you get up the next day hoping to do a better job. That's all I do every day.
Well, we're very proud of you. And like I say, you have long deserved this. So congratulations to our Emmy Award winning journalist, Damian Trujillo. Thank you for being here. Happy birthday to Monica. Say hello to the kids for me.
Thank you. Will do. Good luck, guys.
All right, guys. I'll see you on Thursday. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Peace out.